Okay, I'm going to show you 3 different things that we can make using the new Gatherable type. So first, let's take a look at the Gatherable item. If you open the Create window, it's going to be in the bottom right above Interacting. So if we look at the top, we have 4 buttons. The first 2, a full moon and a quarter moon, let's say. These are the item's cells. So what you draw in these 2 boxes, this is what's going to show up in the game world. Now the Use button is going to determine if there's a requirement for the player in order to interact with the object, and Has lets us select a holdable item from the right in our inventory that the Gatherable will give the player. And at the bottom there's these 3 buttons, and if you click that, there's different attributes that you can give the Gatherable item, similar to how holdables have attributes. Now these are interesting because some of these properties are only available on Gatherables. So at the bottom, you see these different segments of time, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, longer, and randomized. This is the amount of time it takes for the Gatherable to recharge. Until this amount of time has passed, the player cannot interact with the Gatherable again. Another interesting property is heals up here. So if you put this in a harmful environment, the heals property would restore life to the player on use. And over here we have on throw, on action. This would limit how the player can interact with the object. If we set it to on throw, you would have to use a throwing item, and for on action it would have to be either an equipment or maybe even a motion. And then you can even make the Gatherable resistant to this action or motion or throwing object, so it might not always succeed, and then you can even set the rarity of what's inside. So let's just go through 3 examples. The first example I'm going to show you is a plant. This is probably the most intuitive item to make with a Gatherable. So I'm just going to make a very simple berry bush. I'm going to color it green. I'm just going to use 3 different shades of green so that it doesn't look quite so flat. And a lighter shade over here. Okay, so this is the first cell. And now I'm going to actually draw some small berries on the berry bush. And just color them in. Okay. So if I click Harvested, there'll be a slight delay between the time the player interacts with the object and they receive the berry from the object. So I have my bush, now I just need a berry. So I'm going to make a holdable item. And I'm going to change it to consumable and then click edible. So now the player can actually eat the berry once they harvest it from the resource node. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So I'm just gonna clone this one, click Has, click my berry, and now we're all set. I'm just gonna put it in the world. And just to show the difference between the harvesting action, I'm going to make a second version that does not have that property. So these ones on the left are harvesting berries, and the ones on the right are not. So the difference is that if I stand here that sound, that's the noise of the character picking the berries. And you have to actually catch the berry too by hitting space. And now on the right, since I didn't click harvestable, these berries are just going to pop right out instantly. There's no delay at all. Whoops. And that was an accidental death because I walked into a transporting and then walked off a cliff. Okay. So that's the first example, a gathering plant. So the second thing I'm going to make is a treasure chest. So the gatherable item is pretty cool. It's kind of like a cross between an interacting, a changing thing, and an interactive environment. And it's very sophisticated and very powerful, much more powerful than just a plain interactive thing or interactive environment. But it's not as daunting as an interacting item because there's no coding at all. You can just set the properties for what you want it to do and then put it in the world. So here's a little chest, a little treasure chest. So this is the first cell when it's closed. And I'm just going to Control C and then Control V to paste it into the second cell where I'm going to draw what it looks like when it's open. And to make it look like the interior of the chest, I'm going to use a darker shade of brown, since there would not be a light source inside of the chest unless maybe it had a glowing object inside, in which case you could draw a light source inside. Okay. So for use, I'm going to say you need a key. So now the chest is locked effectively. If I put this in the world and you didn't have a key, you would not be able to open it. And so inside the chest, let's put some treasure. And we just had a treasure hunt game in the world on Saturday, so I have quite a bit of treasure in my inventory that I could use. So here's a piece of gold. So click Has, and then click the gold from my inventory. And if I wanted, I could even go to my Collections tab and use an object that I found in the world. So if I click the dots at the bottom, I can set the rarity, sometimes, rarely, and very rare. So let's go to sometimes. And up here I can set the resistance, which will determine how successful I am at opening the chest. So I'm just going to click resistant. Now let's see how this works. So if I put this in the world and hit space, I can't open it because I don't have a key. So I have to make one. So I'm going to go to holdable and then equipment. And I just moved the image in the creator window using Control and the arrow keys. Now I just need to color this in. Okay, I'm just going to name it key. I'm going to press H to change the color a little bit. Okay. So now with this key equipped, I can open the chest. And as you see, it opens instantly. So one thing we could do is if we go back to our properties, we can click only on action. Now the chest will only open if I both have the key equipped and I hit space. So the old chest, all I had to do was walk in front of it. Now I actually have to hit space And here's where the resistance comes into play. So let's try this again. So first try didn't work, second try didn't work, third, fourth, fifth try, opens, no treasure. Fifth try again, no treasure. Fifth try, no treasure. There we go. So I had to try 5 times before I even got the piece of gold that I wanted. So you could put these in a quest, you could put them in your castle or a dungeon, and you could make variations of this treasure chest that might need different keys, they might have different treasures inside. So if I go ahead, I'm going to click has, and then I'm going to click a different piece of treasure. How about this nice piece of garnet? And then I can make it very action resistant and rarely has. And then I'm going to make the chest a little bit darker so I can tell the difference. If I put this in the world, it took 10 tries to open it, whereas the least resistant chest only takes 5. And it's actually a little bit random. This time it took a little bit longer than 10, and still no treasure inside the chest. So you could even make it very rare and have a more powerful piece of treasure within. Okay, so we have a plant, we have a treasure chest. So now let's go to what I think is the most exciting thing you can do with the Gatherable, and that is make a monster. Now I already have a couple monsters in my inventory that I really like. So I'm just going to clone one of them, change the type to Gatherable, and then I'm just going to delete the second cell. And if I say weapon, the player is going to have to use a weapon to defeat this monster. And I already have some weapons. They're just not called weapons. So let's rename one. I'm going to clone my machete and then just change the name to weapon. And now when I have it equipped, I can destroy these monsters. Now that in and of itself isn't too impressive, but this is where things can get interesting. If I change the property to only on throw and change the respawn time, I can even give it a piece of treasure. Let's give it some copper. Now let's say you have to use a shooter. Now let's make a different version. I'm just going to change the colors. Make the respawn 2 minutes. Everything else the same. So now I need a shooter. And I already have some fire that I really like. So I'm going to clone that. Turn this into an emitter. And the second cell is the object that's the projectile, and the first cell, which I'm going to erase, is the object that shoots the projectile. Now I already have a fully red selection of colors. So I'm going to use my middle mouse button to scroll down so I have more options. And I'm just going to draw a very basic magic wand. Okay. I'm going to change the properties because it's going to have the same properties as the old item I cloned. So now when I equip this, I can use it to destroy the monsters. And I can even arrange them in the sky. And shoot them down this way. So you can make all sorts of different interesting mini games using these concepts. So the purple ones have a slower respawn rate. Gave him 2 minutes, and the red ones are only about 30 seconds. And there you have it. That's 3 different items you could use the Gatherable to create. A monster, treasure chest, and a plant. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope to see more of these items in the game world soon. Thanks for watching.